Hello everybody, I'm Tychocelchuuu, and this is a Company of Heroes 2 Noobcast. Like, nobody knows how to play, okay? I'm in the beta, just started today. Every game I play I'm winning. I'm not a particularly fantastic player, but I'm like, destroying people, so, between that and really not having a lot of other replays to cast, I decided I'd do this. This is a game I played. I'm Tychocelchuuu, I'm the Russians, playing as the Russians, and this is Starhunk. He is the Ostheer, playing as the Ostheer. And I'm going to try and break down everything Starhunk has done, wrong and right, probably wrong, and explain why you can be better than Starhunk, why Starhunk can be better than Starhunk, and how he can beat me so that we have a challenge. First issue, building 3 pioneers right off the bat. No. Not as the Germans, not as the Russians, not as the nobodies. You don't need 3 builder units. These guys are good for 3 things. Building stuff, repairing stuff, and flamethrowers. Also laying mines, but you don't need a lot of them to lay mines. So flamethrowers are pretty sweet, but you're not going to have the munitions to support a bunch of flamethrowers early in the game, so don't build a bunch of them early in the game. And spoiler alert, don't build a bunch of them late in the game either, because there's going to be better things to do. So don't build 3 of these guys. Build maybe 1 or 0 for the Germans, and use the first one to build tier 1. Build 0 for the Russians, because you don't need tier 1. You can go for tier 0 for a while with conscripts. So that's your first issue. Especially in the Germans, you want to get your MG42 out pretty fast to start controlling the map. Issue number 2. That's the wrong button. I need to hit this button. Issue number 2. Did he just tech up to... He teched up to tier 1. Okay, so you tier 0, I don't... So the names of the tiers, I guess, are weird. I guess tier 1 is tier 0, tier 2 is tier 1. Whatever. Don't do that. Because you want your fuel to go into buying your building your building for the MG42. Where's these guys? You take this and you build this thing, the infantry company, right off the bat. That gets you your MG42s and your grenadiers. You're gonna want grenadiers too, probably. You can always go for panzer grenadiers instead, but you don't want to skip the MG42 because you need that. So that's the second issue. Third issue. Well, third issue is look at this fight. He's losing. Well, okay, he backed out of the fight. That's good that he's backing out of the fight. Third issue is, even with 3 squads of engineers, he's not using them to do anything really. Pioneers, he got his fuel eventually, so that's good. And it's good that he's getting this cutoff, but unfortunately I can bypass the cutoff once I capture this munitions point in the middle. He, I guess, briefly skirmished for the munitions point here, briefly skirmished for this cutoff here. Neither of those worked. He's being forced to retreat with this squad. I'm going to catch him with these squads and cut him entirely off, so it's better for him to focus more on the fuel earlier, and then when he gets down here and gets this captured, sweep up through here and then fight me. This cutoff's not actually happening. Stop trying to make it happen. It's not going to make it happen. So with more combat-ready units and with a more focused intensity on this fuel, he could have made this fight happen down here, and then maybe I would have been more distracted and I wouldn't have been able to push him off the cutoff with 2 units, and then maybe he would have been able to affect the cutoff. So now he's going straight up to tier 2. What the fuck? Going up to Lichte Mechanized. Let me figure out these tiers. Lichte Mechanized Company is tier 2, I'm calling it. This is going to be tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, even though you research 1 to build tier 2. So that's stupid. These are dumb numbers, Relic. Relic, you're dumb. Or something. I don't know. I guess 1, 2, 3 makes more sense than 2, 3, 4, but there's got to be some better way to make it make sense. Whatever. So he built the Lichte what the fuck, and this will let him get the Flammenwerfer when he eventually builds his half-track. It'll also let him get Panzer Grenadiers, so soon he's going to get into this game. But he's at a big deficit, right, because I've been able to force him off every single fight that he's losing from his infantry units. So build infantry units that can fight, and these do not include builder units. Those are no good. And here are my men. If you do have pioneers, you want to move them in close to fight. The pioneers, where's a pioneer? Let's double click on you and let's move in. The pioneers are equipped with MP40 submachine guns, so those are good up close, whereas the Soviet engineers are, these aren't engineers, are they? I can't, god damn it, everything's messed up. Those aren't engineers. Those are engineers. The Soviet engineers come with rifles, so they're better at far range. So that's the way you want those fights to play out with the builder units. We have a squad of Panzer Grenadiers completed, and he's going for another squad of Panzer Grenadiers. So Panzer Grenadier spam is interesting. That's going to give you good anti-infantry capability. Eventually you can upgrade them with the double Panzerschrecks. It's going to be a lot of munitions though, and it's going to make them much less useful for infantry. So what he's going to do is when you get a unit like a Panzer Grenadier, that's a very powerful anti-infantry unit, you want to use it as effectively as possible, which means since these put out a lot of damage, you want to get them close into enemy units and do a lot of damage, and the best way to do that is to have something take the damage for them. So you get the enemy units distracted or you suppress the enemy units, then you move in with the Panzer Grenadiers to give them as much uninterrupted time as possible where they're not getting shot. Oh man, that was painful. Look at all my conscripts. Where they're not getting shot. Because if the enemy is able to focus fire your Panzer Grenadiers, you're going to be in big trouble. So make sure you don't put yourself in a position where your Panzer Grenadiers can get focus fired down, because then that defeats the purpose of getting like a really hard punching unit like that. Obviously Panzer Grenadiers aren't going to drop like flies, but it's important that when you have a way of dealing damage, you protect your way of dealing damage with the less useful things that you have. So Grenadiers and Pioneers should be tanking for the Panzer Grenadiers if you can possibly make that happen. And the way you make that happen is by moving in first with the Grenadiers and the Pioneers sort of in the main line of attack, and then you flank with the Panzer Grenadiers, forcing them to reposition if they want to shoot you or get away from you or something. Whereas here, you see he's running away, running in his Panzer Grenadiers alone while the Pioneers sit out on the side, just letting me get some good damage in on them. I do have to pull back. Part of the reason I pulled these guys back was because they're very low health and they'll be able to heal up back at base. So I did have to pull back, but he took some damage on these Panzer Grenadiers, so they're going to be less useful in the coming engagement. What's he building now? So he's building a half-track right now. Okay, whatever. That's a fair enough choice. You might worry that, so he's got his two Panzer Grenadier squads heavily invested in Panzer Grenadiers for his anti-infantry. Buying a half-track's just going to be more anti-infantry, and if I had teched to some sort of vehicle, he'd be in trouble. I am, of course, teching to T-34s, so he's going to have some space, some time till I get some vehicles out. I'm not going to have anything with wheels or treads till I get my T-34s, which are fairly late. As tanks go, which is pretty early in this game anyways, but if I were going for my own half-track or, well, I don't know, a T-70, what sort of stuff can the Russians get? Nothing really. But if I were going for some sort of vehicle, he might worry about that. And also he might worry that around this time is when I could be getting an AT gun if I were thinking he's getting a vehicle. So, you know, his Panzer Grenadiers can deal with the AT gun, but then you got to think like, well, if he's getting an AT gun to deal with my half-track and my Panzer Grenadiers deal with the AT gun, maybe I don't need the half-track in the first place, so I can just dump that manpower into Panzer Grenadiers. The half-track's going to cost 120 manpower, so that's very little, but compared to the 360 for the Panzer Grenadiers. But it is going to cost you fuel and munitions to upgrade. You see it's taking 120 munitions to upgrade these Flammenwerfers, so he's dumping a lot into anti-infantry, and that can be dangerous. So try and keep an eye on your opponent's tech, and consider that since I've held, I think, most of the fuel for most of the game, chances are I could be heading into vehicles right now, so that could be dangerous for him. It works out, but it might not have. Not sure I agree with this decision to abandon the victory point. It's already too late to stop me from capturing this field, stop me from taking the field. I guess he didn't want to freeze. This is a closer fire, I feel like, and maybe even this is a closer fire. But whatever. So here's the Flammenwerfer. So when you get a unit like a Flammenwerfer, it's again the same deal as with the Panzer Grenadiers. Get it in, do some real damage early on, and keep it protected. I get an AT grenade right off the bat on this thing. I pay for it with 3 conscripts, so that's not great for me. I pay for it with 4 conscripts, so that's not great for me. Swatting some invisible flies, and but he is engine damaged somewhat in my territory, and so once that happens, you don't drive towards me, you drive away from me because your engine's damaged, and you're down to 2 Pioneer squads because your squad preservation hasn't been very good. So if you're going to overpay on the Pioneers, at least keep them alive for later in the game when you have some vehicles that you need. And now look at these resources. 490 manpower, 42 fuel. Floating way too much. You need to spend that on something. Let's look at our options. AT gun, maybe, maybe not. Maybe wait until your opponent tips their hand. Some sort of vehicle or something. I think it's usually better safe than sorry with an AT gun, as long as you can keep your opponent from capturing it. In a game like Company Heroes 2, the vehicles are going to come eventually, okay? It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. So an AT gun is almost always a good investment if you can keep it prepared. And especially with True Sight, if you find some place to tuck it away, like back here is a fairly good place for AT guns. It's not likely that they're going to show up here and this house is going to block it. So as long as you don't have it firing on anything, you can use it, surprise people with it. So an AT gun might be a good choice for my opponent here. Armored car, I don't know. Scout cars are getting pretty weak. Now the T-34 is out. So actually AT gun, yes, build an AT gun at this point. Look, floating 660 manpower and 58 fuel is just too much. Could buy some Panzer Grenadiers. The issue is that having teched up to tier 2, my opponent is just sitting here instead of teching further for more tanks, or instead of really exploiting the tech. And so here we go. My T-34 comes out, immediately crushes 5 people. So be wary of that. Yeah, that's actually a good question. How do you avoid tanks crushing you? So obviously retreating will give you immunity to crush, so that's always a panic button. Keeping your units spread out is going to make it easier not to get crushed. Try not to get, well, it's very difficult to dodge AT grenades with flamethrowers, so I think I lose a squad here, so this game would have been over much sooner if I hadn't lost a whole conscript squad to this thing. Trying to check to see if a whole conscript squad and maybe a whole nother. So how do you not get crushed? Number 1, retreat is a magic anti-crush button. Number 2, keep your infantry spread out. The more blob they are, the easier it's going to be for me to crush them. Number 3, keep your infantry in the open. If I can get you up against something, like up against the capture point, up against what you're repairing, up against the factory, up against the building, it's very easy to get crushed by a tank, whereas if you're out in the open, sometimes your infantry can run away. You have to look for a quick left turn or a quick right turn by tank to give it thing. But you see here now they're trapped behind a rock and hard, between a rock and a hard place. I'll have to reverse to get them, so it's tough, but so he ends up retreating before I crush anybody. There's not a lot aside from that you can do to not get crushed. Move away from the tank, or to the extent that you can, try not to issue move orders. When you issue move orders and move them in a direction, then they sort of have a will to go in that direction, and if your opponent realizes this, they can move a tank contrary to that direction and crush you and catch you. So if you can, move away. If you can't, don't move at all. Just sort of relax and go with the flow. Otherwise you will be crushed. And what else to avoid getting crushed? I don't know, damage the engine. Before crushing becomes an issue, have some sort of AT around. Or make it so that they can't crush you because it's going to take too much time. Because to crush, it's fairly micro-intensive. You have to click all around the enemy units and stuff. And if there's a squad here, I'm trying to crush, and I'm like, crush, 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 crush. And then you have an AT gun here. No way I'm going to crush them in time in order to get out. Like, theoretically, I could, right? If I wanted to spend the micro, I could maybe crush some people, then pull out, and a lot of players are going to make that choice. But you want to force them to make that choice, right? It's not always going to be obvious to them that it's crushy time. Sometimes they're just going to have to pull out, or maybe you'll even get the kill. They'll go for crushy time, and then your AT gun can kill. I think I just crushed somebody there, I don't know. But here I'm going for these people, and boom, boom, boom. Oh, and stay out of snow. That's another big thing. I crushed another 2 people because they were stuck in the steep snow. That's not happening. Here, I wasn't able to crush because this guy was retreating, but now I'm backing in, and I think I run over that guy too. Or these people kill him. It's very hard to see what's killing each other in Company Heroes 2. I don't like this game. So that's tips for avoiding crush. So how could this guy have done better? Weird teching choices, weird building choices in the beginning, and those killed him. I'm not sure his individual fights were too awful. It was mostly just what he chose to build and why he chose to build it, and then what he was able to do on the map given what he had chosen to build. So this shows you the importance of build orders, stuff like that, what sort of units you tech up to. We have an infinite firing machine gun somewhere around here, STG-44, and I hope you enjoyed this Noobcast. If you are a noob and you want to send in your games for me to cast, then do that. Otherwise, don't. I don't care.